Okay, here is how I use the clicker for dog training. And instead of using the clicker to mark and reward, I use it as an engagement cue. And that's because I mainly work with reactive dogs, aggressive dogs, and dogs with a high prey drive. Every dog has a prey drive. Some are quite low, some are very high, and being in the countryside, there are a lot of people with working dogs as family companions. So when I use the clicker, I start off in the home, double click feed, double click feed, double click feed. When it comes to the dog's food and meal time, take it from their kibble. If it's not as alluring to them, use a high value treat and just hold back some of their food as part of their daily food allowance, because some people do get worried that their dogs are going to gain weight. So take it back. If you have to measure it, make sure that you're not just taking out a handful of kibble and replacing it with a handful of high value treats, because there could be more fat, protein, carbohydrates. If you really need to be specific, just be mindful. So when you double click feed, double click feed, double click feed, repeat, 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 you're conditioning to your dog the sound of the clicker means that food is coming. And then you let them explore the house and the garden. Double click, dog comes back to you, reward. Double click, dog comes back, reward. Have fun with the clicker, but the goal is to take this out into the real world and say your dog has a certain trigger. They catch sight of it, double click, they look back or they come back to you. You reward, and then it is your responsibility, it is your responsibility to create space, to ask your dog to sit and wait using impulse control, to put your dog into a lie down position. It is your responsibility just to decide what happens next in regard to what you're asking of your dog. Remember, this is driven by positive reinforcement, okay? So if your dog doesn't do what you want them to because you haven't communicated effectively after using the clicker, and then you punish them, you are diminishing the point of the experience. But we are human. It is human to react. It's just who we are. But the ego is involved when it comes to actively thinking about punishing your dog and having time to muse over it and decide on what you're going to do. And that's what we really want to avoid. We want this to be focused on positive reinforcement. Reinforcement, don't know what reinforcement is. Hello there, matey. Sorry. I'm in Cuckoo Land. It is my day off and I'm here creating videos, and it's lovely and sunny outside, and I'm secretly a vampire if I'm not actually with a dog. I don't want to be outside if I'm not with dogs. But, you know, I have to like it. I have to make myself used to the environment, as we all do, because it's important for me to enjoy it too. And I'll get some daylight after this. I will, I promise. But right now, I kind of just want to be here. Anyway, start off in low distraction environments using a lot of distance. Double click, your dog looks back. You ask them to do something for you. Double click, dog looks back, comes back to you. You might create some space. You might walk back and forth, do some desensitizing. What I don't want you to do is to click, 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 click. If your dog is not listening, they're already above their threshold and engrossed in something. And if they don't listen to you, but they hear this in the background, click, 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 the reason that I'm not going to double click is because my dog is outside of this room, and it will be my responsibility to reward her for it, because I don't want to desensitize her to it, but it does work. If you do that, you will desensitize your dog to the sound, and then you'll really need that click, click, because they haven't listened to a verbal cue, or the way that you have communicated with your body hasn't been effective, and then you're like, oh crap, what do I do now? What do I do now? And we don't want you to panic. So to avoid you panicking, work on yourself, deep breathing, mindfulness, as cliche as it is, but also don't abuse the clicker. But don't underuse it either, because if you underuse the clicker and your dog only associates it with seeing their trigger, they'll condition. You're clicking, triggers around, I will take this treat, thank you very much. And then I'm going to go right back to looking around for my trigger because you've conditioned this. So be a bit spontaneous with it. Use it in the house, use it when you're doing some recall work with your dog. But when it comes to recall, we want your voice to be the main instrument and cue for getting your dog back to you successfully and positively. But again, just have fun with it at times. Similar to what I say to people when it comes to scatter feeding as well, is if your dog's nose is only going down when their trigger is around, they're going to condition, that's exactly what's happening, and it will lift. So there's been some rewriting of dog behaviour that I've had to do with clients because of previous experiences that they've had. So be spontaneous with it, have some fun. When you double click spontaneously when there isn't a trigger around and you're just making sure that you keep up with that routine a little bit, remember to still use similar actions such as doing a loop round, creating space, asking your dog to sit and wait. Impulse control is incredible and should definitely be focused on. And because your dog is doing what you ask, mark and reward. I use the word yes when I mark and reward. Because I use the clicker as a verb, an engagement cue, I use the verbal cue, yes, as you're getting a reward now. Good girl, good boy is my way of communicating, great job, keep on doing, as is well done. But when I use yes, it is my responsibility to follow that through with a reward, because if I don't and if I break that habit, I am putting dogs at risk if they desensitize to what I'm communicating. So start off in a low distraction environment and then work your way up, and you can really support your dog. Clicker training is so beneficial to dogs. It's so amazing. You can really improvise with the tools that you have. My aim is to create positive experiences. So providing you can do so for your dog and elicit a positive emotional response to what you're communicating and to the environment. Say you're working on your dog's emotional response towards something and you double click and they come back to you, you can create space and you can ask your dog to sit, reward, and they can watch that stimuli. And as they're presenting calm behaviour, you can present them with a treat, and you can then reinforce a positive emotional response towards something that creates a negative emotional response. And remember that when you're working with a trainer or behaviourist as well, is that the behaviour that you see, working on that behaviour is fantastic, but we also want long-term positive effects that feel really natural and rewarding to your dog, and that you go from working on a fixed ratio of reward to a variable ratio as well. Dog training is for life, it's not just for a couple of weeks or months. If you do that and then you take your dog out in the future and it's like everything has gone to absolute crap, it is because you were not consistent. So just remember that and have fun with the clicker, have fun communicating with your dog and creating a really positive relationship with you and with the world around them.